Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It's really quite exciting to end my day here in Modi'in with all of you. What I would like to share with you this evening is a new resource that we've just launched at TALI. It's a resource which is aimed at families, at parents and grandparents. It's to bring Jewish education back into the home to enhance what we do as parents. I think that the pandemic has reminded us all what an important role parents play in our children's education. And I'm very happy that we've been able to launch this new program. I'll say that it started with a whim before Shavuot, when we decided to very quickly put together collate materials for families surrounding Shavuot. And it was very well accepted, both English and Hebrew, which basically led to this new resource that I want to share with you today, At Home with TALI. And I will share it with you. What I'd like us to do is, first of all, I invite you all to open up your microphones. And if you're familiar with the Zoom reactions on the bottom of your screen, you can use them to raise your hand if you'd like to. Oh, sorry. You can use them to raise your hand if you'd like to contribute to the conversation, if you'd like to ask anything or comment or heckle. That all works. So I'll walk you through At Home with TALI, and then we'll study a short text together. At Home with TALI, like I said, is aimed at bringing Jewish education back home. And what we've decided to do is provide once a month this resource, which comes in a digital format, but can also be downloaded as a PDF and printed. I'm just trying to get all my technology up and working so we could enjoy it together. And it is not working. There we go. So you could receive the resource in digital format, or you could choose to print it out and use with your families on a hard copy. The idea every month is to suggest a topic for consideration at home that relates to the various festivals or days that we celebrate in the Jewish calendar that month, but from a new or maybe less traditional perspective. So, for example, the month of Shvat, in which we celebrate Tu Bishvat, and at the end of the month in Israel we have what's called Yom Hamishpacha, the family day. We took both those topics and we decided to focus on connections, on kesher, connections, and bring that to life. The idea in dealing with connections is taking ideas such as those David spoke about, Lincoln spoke about in his lecture, like protecting the environment, working and honoring the land, biodiversity, that we talk about and that are prevalent in the news, and look at them from a Jewish perspective and offer different prisms from which families can delve into these big questions. It's not a resource that needs to be used from cover to cover, but more a collection of ideas, video clips, music, text study, different activities and puzzles, and you could pick and choose the things that are more appropriate for your family, for your children, for your community. So each edition will have various entry points into the main topic, into connections, as it were, with the month of Shvat. And then delve into that. So as you can see here, one of the topics is working and protecting the land. Rabbi Galinkin spoke about that. The second is biodiversity, which I think is actually very important in this pandemic. I think for our own personal well-being and for the social emotional development of our children, it's important, even in difficult times, or especially in difficult times, to be able to lift our head up, look around us, and see the positive things that are coexisting with all the turmoil and trouble and pain that we're living through. Biomimicry is a topic which talks about how we look at nature and are inspired by nature, how many creations and inventions engineered looking at nature. Family connections in this edition talks about Birkat Habanim v'Habanot, the blessing of the children, and introduces the traditional text along with musical renditions of it, as well as inviting families to create their own blessings that they might share with their family, with their children, or have the children bless the elders, the parents and grandparents on a weekly basis. And then we have the Hebrew corner, which takes the word kesher, or connection, and looks at different derivations of the word and how this one root, kuf shin resh, is used in multiple ways in the Hebrew language. Of course, at the end, there's a brain teaser, and families are invited to try and tackle it, send in a picture, and our team will select a winner at the end of the month. The text I thought we would share is one that Rabbi Galinkin actually jumped over very quickly. So, oh, can you hear me? I seem to be losing my internet connection. Can you hear me, Moria? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. The text I'd like to offer is from Psalm 104, verse 24. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam bechokma asita. Or in English, I am losing my Zoom connection.
Yeah, there's no text yet.
There is no text and I'm losing my Zoom. Wait a minute. Rega. Okay, if I get disconnected, I'm going to reconnect immediately. So hold that thought.
You sound great.
Yeah, the sound is fine.
You're okay.
My screen just froze. Okay, I can't see
Peri,
you.
if there's no text, you'll just tell us the text in Hebrew.
Excellent. Okay, I'm back. Okay, have no fear. So the text is, Marabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chokhma asita. How great are your works, O Lord? You've made them all in wisdom. I think these days, with the pandemic and the pain and the suffering and all the ramifications we really aren't totally aware of yet.
So while we're waiting for Peri to come back, I'll tell you the story that I skipped from the Midrash, which you may know, in relation to tree planting. It's a beautiful story. It exists in a number of places in rabbinic literature. The Emperor Hadrian, who many Jews say Yimach Shmo, may his name be erased, he was the emperor who put down the Bar Kokhba revolt. And apparently the Emperor Hadrian actually visited the land of Israel around the year 132 of the Common Era. And the story goes in the Midrash that he saw an old man planting a fig tree. And he says to him, "Why are you planting a fig tree? You're never going to eat the fruits of this fig tree. By the time this tree..."
It was a carob, not a fig.
What?
It was a carob, not a fig.
Well, there are a number of versions of the story.
Oh, well, figs are very quick to make fruit. So it doesn't make sense. Carob takes 70 years.
We'll use a carob. So the emperor says, "Why are you planting the tree? You're an old man." And the old man says, "If I will live to eat the fruit, fine. If my children and grandchildren will live to eat the fruit, also fine. Just as I found the world full of trees, full of fruits, so may my children and grandchildren find the world full of trees and fruits." I just filled in a story that we skipped before while we were waiting for you to come back, Peri.
Excellent. Kicked out of my own Zoom.
A space filler.
Okay, toda rabba. I think it's a really important message to be able to say how wonderful creation is. And I know this is something that we've tried to do as parents. My kids aren't that young anymore, and I've definitely endured lots of eye rolling over this. But I think the idea of radical amazement that we learn from Rabbi Heschel and Marabu Ma'asecha that we learn from this psalm are very, very powerful and very important in these times. And I want to take a closer look at a few of the verses from this psalm with you, and maybe think about them and think about our conception of creation and our knowledge of the creation stories, and try and answer the question I will pose, which is, what does the psalmist read? What is whoever wrote this psalm mean when he says kulam b'chokhma asita? What does he mean that it was all created in wisdom? That's my question. And here are a few verses from the psalm. If anyone would like to read them, I'd love for this to be a more participatory session and wake everyone up. Would someone like to read it?
I'll try.
Meule. Great, thank you.
המשלח מעיינים בנחלים בין הרים יהלכון. ישקו כל היתו שדי, ישברו פרעים צמאם, עליהם עוף השמיים, ישכון מבין אפאים, יתנו קול. משקי הרים מעליותיו, מפרי מעשיך תשבע הארץ. מצמיח חציר לבהמה, ויסב לעבודת האדם, להוציא לחם מן הארץ.
Great, thank you very much. Would someone like to read the English? Michelle Koch on the Hebrew.
I'll read it. Nobody
Great,
else.
thanks.
Okay. You make springs gush forth in torrents. They make their way between the hills, giving drink to all the wild beasts. The wild asses slake their thirst. The birds of the sky dwell beside them and sing among the foliage. You water the mountains from your lofts. The earth is sated from the fruit of your work. You make the grass grow for the cattle and herbage for man's labor, that he may get food out of the earth.
Great, thank you very much. Does anyone want to comment about these verses? What story they tell? Does it remind you of the story of creation from Bereshit? Is it telling a different story? In the reactions on the bottom, there's a possibility of raising your hand if you'd like, right?
What strikes me is the dominance of the water concept.
Okay. Right. In Bereshit, water appears on the second day, right? Maim elyonim and maim tachtonim, and then creation moves on. Yofi, what else?
I think, Peri, what's interesting is it sounds like here the entire purpose of creation is to feed the animals and human beings. It's one huge engine that's feeding us.
Right, it's different elements that feed into each other that
And watering.
kind of provide for each other.
Isn't the Torah also compared to water?
Toranim shela lemayim. Nice, I didn't think of that. Yes. Okay, so when you read, every time you read water here, could you substitute the water for Torah? I'll tell you what it reminds me of. I'm going to show you another picture. It reminds me of this. Do y'all recognize that?
Yep.
Okay. Do you remember the first scene in the Lion
Famous Jewish text.
Famous Jewish text. It's really it's profoundly connected to Psalm 104. What happened? The beginning. Do you remember the opening scene of this film? And I'm going to take us back to the text. Come on, you must have watched it numerous times.
The circle of life. The circle of life.
The circle of life.
To the computer.
Someone else started to say something?
I said they're naming the baby.
Right, at the beginning of the movie, they name the baby. The picture from the trailer is actually taken from the scene where Mufasa, the king, takes Simba, his son, right, over Pride Rock, and he shows him his kingdom, his future kingdom, right? And he tells him that although they might be king of the beast, that one day he Mufasa too, he will die, and his body will decompose, and it'll feed the land, and the land will then grow grass, and the grass will feed the zebras, which then will be hunted down by the lions. He tells Simba about the circle of life. He basically draws the picture that we read about in Psalm 104, right? The springs enable the wild make their way between the hills, and they give drink to the wild beasts, and the wild beasts quench their thirst, and the birds well, and the water, the mountain enables the earth to grow fruit, and man cuts the grass, right? The whole circle of life from the Lion King is depicted here in this psalm. This is obviously only 4 verses from the psalm, or vice versa. This psalm is then brought to life by the Lion King. So then I ask, I'll say one more thing. As opposed to the story of creation is sequential, right? First, the heavens and the earth are separated, and then earth grows foliage and trees, and then the stars and the sun and the moon are invented, and then the animals are created, and at the very end, man is created and brought into the world as the crown jewel of creation. In this depiction, right, everything is basically created in order for man to labor the land. But if you take the metaphor from the Lion King, the man toils the land, and beasts eat, and he eats, and they die, and this whole circle of life, basically the story of creation doesn't culminate in the creation of man in this depiction, but rather man has to toil the earth, and the earth provides for man. And I want to suggest that is the wisdom. The wisdom is in the harmony of creation, how all the elements come together to sustain each other, to enable growth, to enable sustenance, to enable existence of life on Earth. And that I have shown you. So, wait a minute. Let me stop this. That is an example of some of the text study that we bring in At Home with TALI, which actually appears in Hebrew as well. In Hebrew, we called it TALI B'Na'alei Bait, TALI in slippers. And we're really hoping for this to be a resource used by families across the world. Before I share another tidbit from this resource, does anyone want to comment, ask a question, react, say anything, share something? Now would be the time.
What I found interesting, the concept of nature kind of relates to, we always think about it as spontaneous, disorganized thing. And the quote you mentioned stresses the organized interdependence of all the elements, which is a very strong element.
Very nice. Very nice. I think, again, if we go back to our own well-being and to helping ourselves and our loved ones through this time, there are positive messages that we could point to during a pandemic as well. All scientists coming together to look for a cure, and people reaching out to help those in need. It's very easy to find the negative aspects of this time that we're living through, but I think it's very important, and it actually is imperative to point to the positive aspects and to places where they and we can impact our own lives and lives in our community. So I think that's an important thing to stress as well.
Could I ask a further question?
Sure. I'm trying to see you on my screen.
Considering that nature is omnipresent, why aren't these particular prayers or psalms, including the one that Rabbi Goilinkin was talking about, Rosh Chodesh, why aren't they recited every day?
You're
What is
asking
the
if-
presumption here? If something is important, we have to recite it every day. Maybe we have to preserve it to an important moment like Rosh Chodesh.
Right. I think if you read Psalm 104 with Rosh Chodesh in mind, you'll see why they chose it for Rosh Chodesh.
I think
Okay.
I think tradition gives us lots of different opportunities to remember creation and to praise the workings of the world and appreciate nature and appreciate what we have and appreciate living creatures around us. I don't think we need one particular psalm. I think it's good that we have a rhythm of certain things that occur in different points during the Jewish year, during the Jewish day. I think also, we have the liberty to create moments of awe and to mark them as individuals and as families and educators. I think we have a wonderful resource. We have, the entire scripture and rabbinic literature and so much wealth within our tradition, so many lovely minhagim and customs. And I think we could find ways to highlight this all in our lives.
I wanted to give some kind of a response to this gentleman who's asking, why don't we do the 104 every day? Actually, you have a certain number of prayers every day. You can add whatever you want. You can use other things to add to them. And if that prayer is very important to you and you feel very close to it, there is no one that can tell you not to add it.
That's an interesting thought, but I thought you are not supposed to add anything that you select to the code of prayers.
Prayers, I don't know if you're correct. I think that there is something to say about taking away. A prayer, the code of prayer is something that has been evolved through the generations. It was never
And
some kind of a code from the Torah. It's something that evolved. And even today, you can see the different congregations or different movements change the code of prayer in some ways, take something away, put something in, add words, whatever.
Right.
So
I
I don't think that
sorry.
the rabbi can answer that, but much better than I can.
I'll just answer in 30 seconds because I want to leave Peri her time. But you can recite Psalms whenever you want. Some Jews recite the entire book of Psalms every week. Some people recite it in a day. You can always recite a chapter of Psalms whenever you want. And in addition, there are places in the service where you can add your personal prayers. At the end of the Amida, we recite Elohai Netzor in all Sidurim. But in the Talmud, that was a place where everyone recited their personal prayer.
So I would, sorry.
Peri,
I would suggest something else. I want to suggest that we use this wealth and this is our cultural literacy, and we use this language that we read in the Psalms. You don't need to recite the entire Psalm, but if we assimilate some of this language into our life, then when you see a beautiful sight, you could recite a blessing because we have blessings in tradition. You can also look at it and say, oh my God, that's a marabu moment. And I think that's very powerful. I think that's one of the messages. I worked at Kamperman in the Berkshires for many summers, and Rabbi Josh Roshovsky put that verse to music, and it was like one of the highlights of Shirah, of the kids singing, and it became part of the vocabulary to speak of these marabu moments. I think that's amazing, right? I think
like that.
If I could just say one thing that comes to mind is the Birkot Nehanin and Shakol Nia Bidvaro that we say every day for almost anything that we are about to consume. So I think that we're constantly adding to our tefillot and to our bakashot, to everything.
I think most of the students that TALI caters to, most of the families that TALI education caters to, aren't part of praying communities. They're not. These aren't families that, you know, daven 3 times a day. These aren't necessarily families that daven once a week in synagogue. I think that's roughly, you know, that basically describes most of the Jewish world. And I think that if we can ingrain in them Jewish concepts, and we can talk about taking care of the environment from a Jewish perspective, and use our own tradition as our vocabulary, I think that's very powerful, and that'll strengthen the next generation's Jewish identity. I think that's the overall goal of TALI education. And if we can provide these little bite-sized texts and bring them into the home, they're not intimidating. You know, you don't need a doctorate or a master's in order to read them. They're very easy to chew as a family. They're very easy to discuss, and we can assimilate them into our identity. I think that would be very very beneficial. I think that would be a really strong message, and I really invite you to use this resource. I invite you to share the resource. It's accessible from the Schechter website. It's accessible from
Moria put it on the chat. It's in the chat. You can link
in the
directly.
chat. It shouldn't be considered a burden. It's not a chovah. You don't have to use it all. You can really just pick and choose from it. If these messages that we put out there can reach wide and far within the Jewish world, I think that would be a great thing. I was going to share with you the Keshel, the Hebrew vocabulary bit of the resource, but I have run out of time. So I invite you to go in there and see different conjugations of the word kesher and what they mean in modern Hebrew. And I will share the final screen that I have been asked to share with you. If you're enjoying this, oh, wait a minute, what have I done? If you're enjoying zooming into Tu Bishvat with us, then I invite you all to join our mailing list, the Schechter mailing list. As Rabbi Galinkin said, we've done this 3 times now. So it looks like this is turning into a kavua, a reoccurring tradition from the Schechter Institute. And right after me, I am very happy to introduce to you Dr. Gila Wachman, who is specializes in Midrash and Agadah. She teaches at the Schechter Institute in the MA program, as well as in the rabbinical program. Dr. Gila Wachman also teaches our principals and teachers in the TALI Halili program, and you're in for a treat. So have a great week ahead. I wish everyone health, take care, get vaccinated when you can, and we'll see you soon.
Toda rabba, Peri.
Toda rabba, Peri. Thank you very much. Good evening.